Picture this. You wake up at 6 a.m. You drive to work in a car you're still paying off. You grab coffee because you don't have time to make it at home. You work 8, 10, 12 hours. You pick up groceries on the way home. Everything costs more than it did last year. You open your bills. Rent went up again. Insurance went up. Your kid needs new shoes. Your car needs an oil change. Picture this. You wake up at 6 a.m. You drive to work in a car you're still paying off. You grab coffee because you don't have time to make it at home. You work 8, 10, 12 hours. You pick up groceries on the way home. Everything costs more than it did last year. You open your bills. Rent went up again. Insurance went up. Your kid needs new shoes. Your car needs an oil change.
Today, we're going to dig into why Americans are getting poorer, not in theory, but in the real ways it shows up in people's lives. We'll look at the forces behind it, why it feels worse than ever, and what you can actually do about it. By the end, you'll see the full picture. Let's go.
Let's start with the most basic question. Why doesn't your paycheck feel like it used to? On paper, wages have gone up over the decades. But there's a catch. Most people think, I get a raise, so I'm better off. In reality, your raise only helps if it grows faster than everything else you pay for. Housing, food, healthcare, childcare, insurance, taxes, gas, utilities.
When those costs rise faster than wages, which they have for decades, your raise doesn't make you richer. It just slows how fast you fall behind. So you can work the same job, get small raises every year, and still feel more stretched than 5 or 10 years ago. That's not you being bad with money. That's the math working against you.
It's like running on a treadmill that speeds up every year. You run harder, but you don't move forward. And that's before we talk about what getting paid actually looks like today. A lot of work is part-time, contract or gig-based. No benefits, no guaranteed hours, no predictable paycheck. You might make good money one month and almost nothing the next. Planning, saving, and investing become nearly impossible when your income bounces around like that. So, the first piece of the puzzle. Americans are getting poorer because wages aren't keeping up with costs, and more of those wages come from unstable, unpredictable work. The biggest expense for most Americans is housing, and it's become a monster. Think about it. 50 years ago, a typical family could buy a modest home on one income. Today, in many places, 2 incomes barely get you into a starter home, and the mortgage payments feel like a second full-time job. Renters have it even worse. In many cities, rent has risen far faster than wages, so you pay more each year for the same apartment, and your paycheck doesn't stretch as far. Why does this matter so much? Because housing isn't optional. You need somewhere to live. And when housing takes 35%, 40%, or even 50%, food gets squeezed, savings disappear, healthcare gets delayed, and you're one missed payment away from serious stress. Here's the trap. The more of your income goes to housing, the less you can save. The less you save, the harder it is to ever buy a home or build wealth. So you stay renting, paying someone else's mortgage, while your own financial future gets thinner. And it's not just housing prices. Insurance, property taxes, maintenance, and repairs all add up. Owning a home used to be a path to stability. For many people now, it feels like a distant dream or a risky bet. So when we say Americans are getting poorer, a huge part of that story is housing eating more and more of their income, with nothing left to build a future. Now let's talk about debt. In the past, debt was mostly for big things. A house, maybe a car, sometimes an emergency. Today, debt is how a lot of people live. Student loans, credit cards, car loans, medical debt, buy now, pay later, personal loans. People borrow to pay for everyday life, not just emergencies. And here's the problem. Debt doesn't just cost you today. It steals from your future. Every dollar that goes to interest is a dollar that can't go to savings, investments, or your kids' futures. You're paying the bank instead of paying yourself. Student debt is especially brutal. You leave school already in the red. Your first real paycheck goes partly to loans. That delays saving, buying a home, and building wealth. By the time you're free of student debt, you've lost years of compound growth. Credit cards are the same. When you use them for basics like groceries or bills, you're borrowing at high rates just to survive. The minimum payment never seems to shrink, and the balance grows whenever something goes wrong. Then there's medical debt. One illness, one accident, one surgery, and you can owe more than you make in a year. Medical debt is one of the leading causes of bankruptcy in this country. People did nothing wrong, they got sick, and the system buried them in bills. So the cycle looks like this. Higher costs push people into debt. Debt drains future income. Less future income means less ability to build wealth, and the cycle repeats. That's a big reason Americans feel like they're getting poorer. They're not just spending what they make, they're spending what they make plus what they borrow, and the interest never stops. What used to be a normal middle-class life now costs a fortune. Think about what normal used to mean. One income, a house, a car, kids in public school, maybe a modest vacation once a year, and a shot at retirement. Today, that same life often requires two incomes, side gigs, and constant trade-offs. Childcare alone can cost as much as rent or a mortgage. In some cities, sending 2 kids to daycare costs more than a full-time salary, so one parent's entire paycheck goes to childcare, and the family still feels broke. Healthcare is another anchor. Premiums, deductibles, co-pays, and prescriptions add up. Even with insurance, a serious illness can wipe out savings. So people avoid doctors, skip medications, and hope nothing goes wrong. College used to be a path to a better life. Now it's a path to decades of debt. And even with a degree, there's no guarantee of a job that pays enough to cover those loans. Then there's the invisible stuff. Car repairs, home maintenance, replacing broken appliances, helping aging parents, supporting adult children who can't afford to move out. All of it adds up. So the normal American life, the one people expect and work toward, has gotten dramatically more expensive. And when the basics cost more than 1 or even 2 paychecks can cover, people don't feel middle class. They feel like they're hanging on. So if regular people are getting poorer, where did the money go? A big part of the answer: wealth today grows through assets, not just wages. Stocks, real estate, businesses. When those go up, the people who own them get richer. When you don't own them, you don't share in that growth. You only get what your job pays, and that hasn't kept pace. So you have 2 tracks. Asset owners, their wealth grows with the economy. Wage earners, they work harder but mostly tread water. That gap has widened over decades. The top slice of Americans own most of the stocks, most of the real estate, and most of the businesses. When the economy grows, they capture most of the gains. Meanwhile, the average worker gets a small raise, watches prices rise faster, and feels like they're slipping. It's not because they're lazy. It's because the rules of the game favor people who already have capital. If you don't start with assets, it's much harder to build them when every dollar goes to survival.
So when we ask why Americans are getting poorer, part of the answer is structural. More of the economy's growth is flowing to those who already have wealth and less to those who depend on wages.
Let's talk about something we don't discuss enough: the psychological cost. Getting poorer isn't just a numbers problem. It's a stress problem, an anxiety problem, a shame problem. You work hard, you make good choices, and you still can't get ahead. That creates a constant background hum of worry. What if the car breaks? What if someone gets sick? What if I lose my job?
That stress affects everything: sleep, health, relationships, decision-making. When you're exhausted and anxious, you're more likely to make short-term choices: fast food instead of cooking, convenience over savings, because you don't have the energy to do otherwise. And there's shame. People blame themselves. I should have saved more. I shouldn't have taken that loan. I'm bad with money. But often the problem isn't personal, it's systemic. The system is built in a way that makes it very hard for ordinary people to build wealth.
That shame keeps people quiet. They don't talk about money. They don't ask for help. They suffer alone, which makes everything worse. So when we talk about Americans getting poorer, we have to include the mental and emotional weight of financial stress and how that makes it harder to escape the cycle. So what can you actually do about it? First, stop blaming yourself. A lot of this is structural. Understanding that can relieve some of the shame and help you think more clearly. Second, focus on what you can control. You might not be able to change wages or housing costs overnight, but you can. Cut or reduce high-interest debt. Trim spending on things that don't matter. Build even a small emergency fund. Learn one new skill that could lead to a better job or side income. Third, protect your stability. In an unstable economy, having a few months of expenses saved is a form of power. It gives you options when things go wrong. Fourth, think long-term with what you have. Even small, regular investments can grow over time. The goal isn't to get rich overnight. It's to slowly shift from surviving to building. Fifth, talk about money. With people you trust. With a financial advisor if you can. In communities and with others who get it. You're not alone, and you don't have to figure it out by yourself. Americans aren't getting poorer because they're not working hard enough. They're getting poorer because the cost of living has outpaced wages, debt has become a way of life, and the gains from growth are flowing to those who already have wealth. The game has changed, but once you understand the game, you can play it more deliberately. If this hit home, leave a comment. Tell me where you feel the squeeze the most: housing, debt, healthcare, or something else. And if you want more practical strategies to protect your money and build stability in this economy, subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll keep breaking this down, one video at a time. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself and your wallet.